Well, good evening. We're glad to have you here with us, and it's interesting to see some empty chairs, but we're glad to have a few filled as well, and we welcome those who are joining us virtually also. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item 1.3 is approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of approval, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye and the agenda is approved. Item 1.4 is a presentation and update from Battleborn Academy. This is a non-action item.
Well, it's exciting. I get to go first. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening. My name is Lauren Schulman, and I'm proud to be the program director of the Battleborn Youth Challenge Academy. It's nice to finally meet you. And I actually come with nothing but good news this evening. I know, right? Everybody needs some good news. So here it is. I brought with me this evening and gave to Mr. McEnany our signed copy of our agreement. So the Board of Examiners has approved it, so we are all set and good to go. We have a contract, and renovations will begin next week on the academy. Our hiring timeline has not moved at all. We actually have positions posted, and monthly we'll continue to hire. We have begun ordering furniture, and this month we actually kicked off our marketing and recruiting extravaganza and spent the month meeting with stakeholders throughout the state. So we are officially recruiting. Our website is up, and the cadet application to include the medical portions are also posted on our website, so we can now start accepting cadets for the July class. And we absolutely intend to bring in 120 candidates on July 18th. Any questions for me?
Well, just for people who aren't aware of what your academy is, could you give us a quick rundown?
I would love to.
Thank you.
So the Battleborn Youth Challenge Academy uses an 8 core component curriculum to work with 16 to 18-year-olds who are at risk of not graduating high school. So we're recruiting throughout the entire state of Nevada. Those who are accepted will have the opportunity to live with us in Carlin for 22 weeks. During that 22 weeks, they will attend academics Monday through Friday. But we also teach service to the community, leadership, followership, health and hygiene, life coping skills, responsible citizenship. So again, just all 8 core components to holistically address the needs of why those youth were struggling in public school. At the end of those 22 weeks, we'll hold a commencement ceremony. They'll return to their home communities, reintegrate back into their home schools if they have not earned a diploma while they're with us. And then we'll track them for the 12 months following through a mentor. So the mentor must meet with each graduate a minimum of 4 times a month, 1 time in person, the other 3 can be over the phone or social media. And then they'll report back to the academy so that we can track them for those 12 months to make sure that they are either re-enrolled in school or have joined the workforce or in post-secondary education or in the military. So 17.5 months, and our tax dollars are funding the program, so it's completely tuition free for those families and youth who are attending the academy, and we provide everything for them while they're with us. Uniforms, letter writing materials, obviously the academics, and anything that they would need while they're with us.
Any other questions?
When you say 120 candidates, is it just Elko County or statewide?
No, sir, it's statewide. So we'll recruit from across the entire state, and then it is an acceptance process based on those who have the propensity to be successful with us. So obviously we want to help everyone who's struggling in school, but not everybody's going to have the internal motivation to stay in Carlin for 22 weeks with us using that quasi-military model. So they wear uniforms every day. We call it healthy stress. They have another way to describe it. And so we just want to make sure that they are well aware of the environment that they have applied for this opportunity. And it really is, we refer to it as a $20,000 scholarship. It will cost us about $20,000 to put each and every one of those youth through, and we don't backfill. So once we accept them, we need to make sure that they're going to stay with us for those full 22 weeks. But it is a voluntary program.
How are we doing as far as having staff hired to present the education?
Okay, so that's a great question. As far as the school district goes, that's what y'all will do. But as far as we're concerned, for the other 50 state employees, we posted, I'm currently a team of 2, well 3, counting my budget officer who's in Carson City. We posted for our commandant position, held interviews last week. I currently have 2 positions posted right now, and the big push will be after the holidays, but we certainly have had applicants for the positions that we have posted. So we haven't hit any obstacles yet.
And I was gonna ask about that. Did we already hire an administrator for the academy, or we're still in that process?
Oh, we're still in the process.
Okay.
Finalizing it.
We've got plenty of time though. Right.
July 18th, right?
So, do or die come July, those doors are opening, yes sir.
I like it.
Any other questions that I can answer for you? Well, I just want to thank you for your commitment and your investment in the youth of Nevada. Thank you very much for your support, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you, we appreciate the update.
Absolutely.
Item 1.5 is a presentation from Spring Creek High School FBLA and CTE programs. Mrs. Williams.
Yeah. So 2 presentations in a row that are positive. This is on a roll, on a roll. As luck would have it, today I tried to find an old letter to give me some guidance, and no amount of searching produced anything, so I kept thinking in my mind, where's that doggone file anyways? And I think you can all understand that. So I stand here with a fresh set of thoughts. My name is Tiffany Williams, and I'm the business teacher at Spring Creek High School. This is my 11th year of teaching there, and my 32nd year in this community. My background is business, so teaching the subject ties the material rather nicely. So first I want you to know that I appreciate your time and attention. I hope that this presentation brings a breath of fresh air after the very tenuous meeting that happened last time and the challenging situations we have been in since March. I started presenting to you 10 years ago. I couldn't believe it's been 10 years coming in front of the board. After figuring out who was approving what and realized that you needed to hear what we were doing with those approvals and connect with some of the students who are in the business pathway, mine is the business management pathway and the accounting finance pathway, and the CTSO that aligns with that, which is Future Business Leaders of America, which is FBLA. Our program, which has evolved and keeps evolving over my teaching career, allows students to get anywhere from 6 to 12 college credits should they keep in the pathway for 4 years and meet a few other state requirements. This does not include additional college credits that they may earn from English, history, or any other classes they may decide to take. I want you to know that I feel like I'm a truly blessed teacher, and those that have been here for the past few years, this is not new. To be able to see these students, 2 of which are next to me, come in as 14-year-olds and leave me at 18, well, the growth is huge for those that stay and allow the metamorphosis to happen. Many can see a project from woodworking, welding, engine repair, cooking, but it's hard to see changes in students in the business program until you follow them for 4 years. It is hugely important for us to realize that we need these future business owners, managers, and employees as small businesses in America employ 60 to 70% of our workers. Although you may not be able to see those changes, I can. I would like to introduce my president next to me for FBLA, and she's also my business management pathway, Alicia Hokinson, who will be speaking first, and then my historian next to her, Matthew Crossman, who is also in my business program, and he will be speaking last. Do you have any questions?
Questions from the board?
Awesome.
Okay. So, my name is Alicia Hokinson. I know this will seem a little long, but just come with me on my journey. I'm currently a junior at Spring Creek High School, and I'm the local chapter president for my school. I would like to say thank you for the unforgettable memories I was able to make, all because of your support. In 8th grade, I started FBLA because my friends were going to a meeting and they invited me to go. They said that it would be just a great experience and something that would take up time after school. I kind of liked the first meeting. It was a little iffy. So I went to the second meeting, and at the second meeting, they were applying to be officers, and all of my friends told me I should apply to be the historian. I ended up getting the position, and I started fundraising for FBLA. I started doing basketball and football concessions for the high school, so that year, I organized a fundraiser with my FBLA team for the March of Dimes. I went to state for the first time in Reno, Nevada. I would say that state my 8th grade year was one of my favorite memories from middle school. I did a lot of networking before I even knew what it was. At the close of my 8th grade year, the school had us take a tour of the elective classes at the high school. And that was where I was first introduced into the business pathway. I knew instantly that I was going to take that class and that that was the path I wanted to pursue. Going into my freshman year, I knew I wanted to be as involved in FBLA as I could because I unfortunately could not be an officer because I did not apply. I did a lot of volunteer work and I always stepped up to any event FBLA offered that I could go to, and it turned out to be one of my most active years. I expanded my fundraising experience to more than just concessions. I sold tri-tip dinner tickets to local businesses as well as friends and family. I did Winterfest and I loved it. Winterfest is a local Spring Creek community event put on with Corey's. They do concessions, well, not concessions, but they put on fireworks and the local radio station puts on music. The following week I did Shop with a Cop. Shop with a Cop is a very rewarding experience. I started working in the school store, learning many valuable skills like customer service. Later the same year, I achieved the manager position, and I learned how to balance a till, differentiate a friendship and a business relationship, learn leadership skills, and how to direct other people in a way that they feel appreciated for their help. This is where I learned the importance of building trust between an employer and an employee. Then I attended state for the second year in a row. I learned how to be more prepared for unexpected circumstances. I then applied to be an officer for my sophomore year. I went through an interview process and I was elected to be the webmaster. My freshman year is the year I started in the business pathway. In this course, I learned about just the basics of the business world and the economy. And I learned general knowledge that I think everyone should be exposed to. I'm grateful for it because I'm learning in high school what kids my age will be learning all through college. For me, it took the pieces of information that I already kind of knew and expanded on it, so I got a better understanding. Going into my sophomore year, I was the webmaster for my local chapter. I continued working at the school store, serving as a worker, a trainer, and a manager. I also continued my concession work, counting back change and running a cashier's box. I also helped clean up after games and everything. Due to state-funded CTSO budget cuts, the officer team at Spring Creek High School took on the responsibility to host the Fall Leadership Conference. We decided that that event was too important to students who would want to attend because it is an event where you are required to dress professionally, but you don't have to compete. I helped plan, set up, and run our first ever bingo night fundraiser, and we had a great turnout. Unfortunately, the live school year was cut short, but that didn't deter Nevada FBLA. We continued to have state competition via the internet. I placed second in healthcare and administration and seventh in entrepreneurship. That was the year I lettered in FBLA, and I would consider that one of my biggest accomplishments. I moved on to the second course of the business pathway, and this is really when I realized just how important the information I was learning was going to be in my future. I learned mainly about what to expect in the workforce and what the workforce really looked like. I built a resume, did mock interviews, and worked on being able to sell items to consumers. I learned about time management and soft versus hard skills. My sophomore year, I took a financial literacy class, which basically teaches budgeting and expenses and how to deal with them. That program no longer exists. But I took a pretest, and I got an A on the pretest because of how much information I learned with my freshman and sophomore year combined because of the business classes. I am now the president of my local chapter, and I'm on my third year of the business pathway. This year in FBLA, we have definitely had to make a lot of changes. However, it is good to know that we are able to adapt to those changes. Even though our school is online, we still managed to have a mini team building event with our officers. The outcome of the coronavirus will determine our activities for the rest of the school year. I plan to finish out my third year in the business pathway and apply to be a state officer for my senior year. My senior year, I plan to take the advanced studies class offered at my school, and as well as an accounting class to finish out my high school career. I cannot thank you enough for the opportunities that I have been given and the immeasurable knowledge that I have obtained from both programs. I feel as though the business pathway has given me an advantage on being prepared for what comes after high school. With being the manager of the school store, that has given me real-world experience and something I can put on my resume, college applications, and scholarship applications. I now know I can take on more responsibility than I thought I could. Finally, I have learned how to be a leader and direct people as a manager. I can apply every skill I was taught and learned in both programs outside of school in my real life, everyday life. And this concludes my presentation.
I just want to start off by saying thank you for letting me be here tonight and giving me the opportunities with this business pathway program. My name is Matthew Crossman. I am a sophomore at Spring Creek High School, and I am the current historian and fill-in treasurer. I would like you to know that I am very grateful for everything that happened through this entire experience. At the end of middle school, I was lost in where I wanted to go with my high school career. So I thought, I'm pretty good with economics, let's take a business class. I took that business class with the intentions of it being an easy A and hoping that I could put my focus on my main subjects such as math, science, and English. Well, now that I am a year and a quarter of the way through this program, I am pleasantly surprised. At the beginning, when I found out that Mrs. Williams was not the teacher to let you pass this class without putting in hard work, I was not happy. Once I had got the idea in my head that I was going to have to work to get my beloved A, I knew in the long run that eventually the work would pay off. So I pushed on, even though I hated it sometimes, until Miss Williams asked me if I wanted to participate in FBLA. I thought it would be lame and a waste of time, but I still gave it a shot. I was going to help with concessions for one of the football games, and I remember thinking about how all day I could have been doing a million different things that evening. When the time came, I was ready to help. As the night grew darker and the people started showing up for the game, we started getting busy. I found myself enjoying being around those other people and working to serve the spectators. This event, oddly enough, is what really got me hooked into FBLA. As I started to participate more in FBLA, my ties to the class started to strengthen. Even though the work started to ramp up, I found myself starting to enjoy that class every morning. I remember getting asked to do Shop with a Cop and thinking very little of the event. Shop with a Cop must be my favorite thing I have done with FBLA so far. I remember that morning being freezing cold and boring up until all the kids showed up. I truly did not realize how many kids that there were in our local community that did not get to have their parents for Christmas that year. It was a huge eye-opener for me of how fortunate I was to be able to have presents, let alone see my family for the holidays. What was even more surprising and inspiring was how selfless those kids were. Many got a couple of things for themselves, but everything else for their family. It was truly very inspiring to me, and I still hold that close to my heart to this day. Earlier this year, in January, I got invited for a bowling night, and as I enjoy bowling, I accepted. This, to me, was the first fun event that I could do with FBLA, and I had a blast. This showed that this organization, while had plentiful work, had some fun with it as well. The next big opportunity for me was to do state. At first, I was extremely nervous to take on such a big task, but I felt I was ready for it. I went from being a nervous wreck in February to the beginning of March, right before coronavirus happened, and I was eager to go. When the virus hit, I thought that state would have been canceled and we would have continued on with the school year. But they were able to completely set up the entire program and conferences, all the activities, etc., in about a month's span, and it was very impressive to me. Sadly, I did not get to present online. They took my test scores, and I placed 6th in business technology and 7th in intro to technology information. Overall, so far, my experience with FBLA and the business pathway has been wonderful, and I can't thank all of you tonight enough who make this experience possible. That concludes my presentation.
Okay, do you guys have any questions of my students? This is always a great time to kind of put them on the spot a little bit.
Well, at first I want to say great job. You guys, thank you for sharing your experiences and thank you for carrying on the great tradition of FBLA in Spring Creek. I always love to see you come. So I'll start with Alicia, and I know the other board members have questions too. So Alicia, what do you plan to do when you graduate?
I'm thinking about marketing, because when we did this whole marketing thing last year in the business pathway, I really liked it. I like to see how can I sell this to you? How can I make this look good to you? Other than that, I just want a business degree and I want to be able to do something with it.
Okay, sounds like you've got a good start to your plan. Matthew, same question.
So, if I plan on going to college, which I'm not quite too sure yet, I plan on going to UNLV and taking a hospitality management major. And if that doesn't happen, then I would either like to work for my uncle who owns a restaurant down in Las Vegas, or open my own business and be my own employer.
Any other questions from the board?
So you were saying, for both of you, you were saying that obviously this year has given some new challenges for you. How, because it's good at that age to see the challenges, how are you taking them on? How do you think that actually, how are you taking a positive out of this? In the future, to open a restaurant or become a marketer?
So, I guess I'm not personally understanding the question. Could you ask me again?
The challenges that you've faced in the last couple months because of COVID and the shutdowns and the online, you're still doing the business course. How do you feel that those challenges, how are you taking a positive out of it? What lesson are you learning?
I'm learning kind of adversity, so I'm learning how to take on all of my real life classes that I was going to and having them online and having to do all of them at the same time and keep on track. So I'm learning how to take on all of that responsibility while still being able to live my life.
So I would say that one thing I've really taken out of this experience is that businesses have to be able to adapt to survive, and that you have to take it day by day and just see how things go out and work off of there.
I was just going to comment, very impressive. Thank you for being here tonight. Your story, how you got to this point tonight is just very impressive. So
Thank you.
I wish you all the luck, and thank you, Mrs. Williams, for all you do out there, because it's a consistent, high-performing program.
I've been blessed with some really great kids. Yeah, thank you. Great kids. I've been blessed with good kids, so.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mrs. White.
yeah, I'd just like to, I don't have any questions, but I do just have a couple of comments. I just wanted to say, both of you should be very proud of your accomplishments. Sounds like you have done a fabulous job through FBLA. And Mrs. Williams, thank you for bringing your students to the boardroom. It's very nice to see students back in our boardroom again.
I agree, and I think they need to see a positive, not just the negative, so I'm thankful, I really was, that I got 2 in a row. You know, one before me and then this one. Who knew? Okay, thank you very much,
Thank
appreciate
you. We
your time.
appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item 1.6 is input from the public. This is a period devoted to comments by the general public, if any, and discussion of those comments. In the interest of privacy and due process, the public is requested to not raise personnel issues except in a legally noticed closed personnel session of the board. No action may be taken upon a matter raised, and we just wanted to let you know up in item 1.1, it says that we reserve the right to place any restrictions on comments by the general public. Any such restrictions must be reasonable and may restrict the time, place, and manner of the comment, but may not restrict comments based upon viewpoint. So we just wanted to let you know we're going to keep public comment to 2 minutes this evening. Ms. Gray will be timing over there. We're glad to have you join us anytime, but we do want to go home before midnight. So I have one request from Chantel Moore.
Is it okay if I sit, or do I need to stand?
I think if you stand, we can hear you better.
Okay.
And you're welcome to come up front, or you're welcome to talk
No,
loud
I'm
from there.
good here.
If you're
So
nervous
I
to
was
come up.
I was afraid to come and even speak, mostly because I feel like, and I've talked to Tammy and Teresa about this, I feel like talking about COVID and school opening or closing is just as bad as talking about politics or religion with a stranger. So I don't want no rotten tomatoes thrown at me. But I do want answers to questions, because when my kids were asked if they were going to go back to the hybrid model, I said, I need to know more. Like, I need to know what this is going to involve and how's it going to affect my husband and his place of employment if my kids are exposed. They didn't have an answer for me. But I was one of the 85 to 90% of parents that wanted their kids to go back, because that's what I wanted, but I didn't know all the fine detail. So flash forward another month, and then they say, okay, is your child going to come back to school? And I said, I need to know if my child is exposed 6 feet for 15 minutes with a child that is a known positive case, will our entire family have to quarantine? So that's my question.
And we will have someone get back with you on that.
So I actually have a little more to add to that then.
Go for it, please.
So this is the problem that I'm running into, because for us, we value education in our family, but we also need a roof over our head. And so I just really want people in the community to think about, if it's so important for you to have your kids back in school, consider what that's going to look like financially for you. Because their employer, and this has happened already, you can't just say, well, I'm out of PTO, I have to go back to work. I'm just going to go take a COVID test and have it be negative and give it to the employer. Some employers will not take you back, even if you can produce a negative test. And then some people may think, well, it's fine, I just won't tell anybody that my kid is quarantining right now and we'll be good and I'll just go to work. It's not always going to be within your control, because the school had told me that our kids' information will go to the state, and it's the state's decision to contact your family's employers.
Thank you, Chantel, your time is up, but thank you, we appreciate you coming in and sharing those thoughts. Do we have any other public comment?
Cool.
All right. We will move on to item 2.1, our superintendent's report.
Okay. And you give me just a second. I wanted to make notes so we'll be able to get some information to you. So appreciate your patience here. So posted under this evening's report is the modifications that each school has made to the ECSD reopening plan. And as was presented at the last meeting, some of the schools will be reopening full in person, and some in a hybrid model, and those hybrid models have been modified from the original plan that was approved in July, and they are unique to the school community depending on the needs that have been identified by the community for the school. You'll also notice that since we presented at the last board meeting, that there are some changes that have been made in regards to timing. And this is a result of responding to the motion that was made and getting some clarification on that was approved at the last meeting. The schools have been working as instructed very closely with their communities to determine the best approach to reopening their schools, and that includes the timing. For instance, Carlin Combined Schools met again with their community. They met last evening. And it was determined that and it's listed on that posting, that they're going to open in the hybrid on November 9th, but that with the intent of making some changes and modifications and so that they can go full in person by November 23rd. So, and that was communication that was sent out to the families of Carlin. So there's still some things that are in motion. Elko and Spring Creek High Schools are working with their stakeholders. They're still working with their stakeholders, and these teams include teachers and staff, administrators, parents, and students, and they're working out the details regarding the hybrid model and any modifications that they're making to that model, as well as the date for reopening. But their intent is that it will be before the end of the second quarter. It will be before then. The target date that they have is January 4th. But again, there is still work to be done with their communities in working at those details. So that is what is posted. We heard from our lead school nurse last time we were together, Ms. Bobby Shanks. And Bobby and the team have been finalizing a dashboard, which is going to be posted on our website. And this dashboard will give information regarding the number of students and staff that may have tested positive and been infected, as well as those that are excluded from schools as close contacts and whatnot. So we'll keep that information updated and available to the public on our website. Also, the team is putting finishing touches on a sort of at-a-glance chart that will give parents and families information regarding the health protocols as they relate to positive cases in schools. And, you know, we referred at the last meeting to the guidelines that were put out by the state, and every situation is unique. And once we have an incident in our schools where a student or a staff may test positive, there's our contact tracing team goes into effect, as well as the county's contact tracing team, and they're working together. And that's where a lot of determinations are made is in regards to what's going to happen and what the response will be for the schools. And so we're putting together this chart, and it is not going to be inclusive of everything that can happen because there are so many different scenarios. But it will give families an opportunity to take a look and kind of get an idea of what will constitute, you know, closing a classroom. And that's what we anticipate would be mostly what would happen, is that a classroom may be impacted, depending on the person's position in the school and how much exposure they have around the buildings. It may be that the school is closed for 24 hours while we do a complete cleaning. So we'll have that ready very shortly. It is just about ready to go. But again, we just want to give people an idea, but it is not inclusive of everything that can happen. But we know that there are questions, and so we want to be able to get that out. I also wanted to mention that at the behest of the county commissioners, I received a call from the assistant county manager, Mr. Cash Miner. He reached out to me in regards to, there was discussion last time about our county commissioners wanting to work with the school district, and so they've made a very generous offer of being able to give to the school district some of the CARES money that they have. Every county received CARES funding that is to utilize for very specific reasons, but it is managing and dealing with COVID at the county level. The school districts have also received CARES funds, which we have used primarily for PPE and, you know, cleaning materials and whatnot. So we're really excited for this opportunity to be able to work with the county commission and our community leaders as we're working as a team here to identify those items that we will be using and needing in order to be able to facilitate the opening of schools. So we're really excited about this partnership and very grateful for the generosity of our community leaders. In addition, we are working with Nevada Gold Mines, who are, there's one more, I want to go back to the county, but we're working with Nevada Gold Mines, who has assembled a group of businesses in our communities, and they are making a generous donation so that we can get the rest of the Chromebooks that we need. Every child has a Chromebook in their hands at this point, but we have some Chromebooks that we know are aging out, and we need to have a supply on hand so that we can replace those Chromebooks when and if they do become inoperable. So we're really grateful to our business partners and to our community leaders. And also going back, the Elko County Library has just submitted a grant on Friday, and we've put in a letter of support as partners with them. They are going to be, they put the grant in to apply for monies that will allow us to purchase the last of the devices we need to be able to ensure that our families have appropriate connectivity. So we're working with Verizon and Kajit in partnership with the library. So we're very grateful for their partnership as well.
questions for our superintendent?
Dr. Robinson, could you speak to, I know last meeting we had talked about applying for variances. I know that I had received an email from Rob with my inquiry about that we had applied for the variances that we could.
Yes, we have. So the state allowed for some variances to help with, in certain situations, so that schools could provide services, certain services, within the restrictions, and these were variances or waivers from those restrictions. So we have applied, and they're very limited. It's a very defined scope for those things for which you can apply for a variance. We have applied and received, and Mr. Smith, if I get these wrong, please jump in if I miss one. But we've applied and received variances that allow our professionals who provide services for students with special needs to be able to work closer to them in order to provide those services, and it's on very specific occasions. And we have 2 variances, right?
So that's specifically for kids who have really high needs, such as toileting needs, occupational therapy, physical therapy, those sort of things that you can't really do from a 6-foot distance. So it's really, really specific to needs that are documented in their IEPs or 504 plans that require that. And then there's a transportation variance as well.
Other questions from the board?
I had a question, Madam Chairman. Dr. Robinson, is it one of those areas that we could apply for a variance? Would that include relaxing some of the social distancing parameters in the high schools, since our capacity seems to be a limiting factor on getting our high school students back in the schools?
That was a question that was asked, I think back in July or August when those variances first came out, and I did check with the Department of Education, and those variances are not being used to relax any of the restrictions. For the general population, as I said, it's for very specific circumstances, like working with our students with special needs and our professionals' ability to be able to work closer to them. And even in that is not, ongoing. It's really in specific and isolated, quick incidences. But for something general, like overall reducing the social distancing amount, they will not approve those.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
And then the plans that we adopted in July, does this new color coding stuff, impact what we do as far as the fluidity of each of those plans, transitioning from one to the other? Like now apparently we're in a red zone or whatever.
So they don't impact the plans. The plans stand alone. The plans are in response to what is happening in the community. And our public health officer would have the ability to say if we are at a position that he felt was of concern. He does have the ability to be able to say, school district, it's time for you to take a more restrictive approach to education. So he does have that ability to do that. And of course, the board would have the ability to make an adjustment as well.
But that also is a reason Washoe County is able to do what they're doing, in a similar situation. I think as far as being in a red zone and still having those kids going in a hybrid model. After the governor's press conference last evening, I had a sense that he's looking down the road to the 1st of January and looking at being able to increase the numbers of individuals that can be for conventions and things like that. So, and we've seen that from 50 to 250. So, yeah.
There was no indication in that last press conference that he's leaning towards becoming more restrictive. In fact, he's keeping his goal of continuing to open up.
Yeah.
And how's the system right now impacting possible scholarships for sports and whatnot for some of the more senior kids who are looking for colleges? Do we know?
I don't have that information right now. I know that this is happening, across the country, so as I speak to colleagues all over the place, there's the expectation or the experience that we're having that things will be modified across the country for that type of thing, but we don't have any information yet about what that will look like.
I know we have Mr. Taylor from Spring Creek High School in the back, and I know you have had a student just recently sign a letter of intent to run cross-country, correct?
Correct.
I know there are students that are still, colleges still need athletes, they still need to give out their scholarships, so I don't know if you've had more than one recently, or if that's someone I've
We
seen
also have
recently.
a student that should be signing a letter of intent for baseball as well. So, excuse me, colleges are still making contact with students. They're going off of club teams, AAU. They're using, stats that they had from previous seasons. And a lot of our athletes that are recruited, it's a couple of year process. They usually, they don't pop up on a radar within 1 month. So a lot of our athletes that have been being recruited, that continues. And so we're still seeing that today.
The junior year is usually the prime recruiting year for college athletes.
And they're not being sanctioned, is my point now, because they're missing a year, if you will, almost.
Correct, yep. And some of the universities have had to either shorten or cut their seasons altogether as well. And what we've seen so far is the universities and these colleges continue to offer the scholarship in anticipation they'll have a season next year or changing when the season happens.
Thank you.
And have we started practices gearing up for January?
That's coming.
So the NIA made the announcement that we're still in the same practicing phase that we have been in. It's all preseason practicing. January 2nd is the first date where winter sports are allowed to officially begin practice. That's 2 weeks before, which is fairly traditional. Usually official practices begin about 2 weeks before the season. The first competitions are scheduled for January 14th. So that's, other than the very, very odd closure between, obviously, but other than that, everything is directly on schedule for winter sports.
Can they do open gyms at this point?
They can, again,
Non-official practices?
Yeah, absolutely. So an open gym would be a preseason activity. And we have been in preseason allowability since the summer. Now, many coaches decided to shut those practices down early on, particularly for the fall sports, because they knew that they weren't going to be able to do anything for quite a while. But preseason practices have been available since August.
Are we seeing guidance, the counselors incorporating non-traditional methods of notifying students about scholarships? Or are they utilizing the same? Elko High School, they had the newsletter that, senior newsletter that went through, and you've got these scholarships and they're gonna be due by December 1st. I don't know, are we seeing anything different happening out at the high schools? Mr. Taylor?
Our guidance department created their own website at our school. We have our traditional senior email lists. We're also trying to bring in small pods of seniors by alphabet to come in and meet with their counselors, get information about scholarships, deadlines, make sure we get the information out about the Nevada Promise, all the traditional scholarships that we're doing. They've set up office hours where students can come in and either meet in person following all of our distancing mandates, and they're also setting up virtual appointments as well for students and families.
Is this true with the other competitions, like music or more academic competitions, or do we know?
Everything is altered and
Yeah.
modified, but, we.
But are we still moving forward?
programs have
The
continued.
kid, several kids need different
Right,
outlets.
right. Yeah, and the programming has continued, modified and creative, but they have continued.
All right, any other questions for our superintendent from the board? Thank you for that update, and it's great to see those dates that the schools have decided on. All right, item 3.1 is receipt of the 2019-2020 Elko County School District Audit as prepared by Hinton Burdick.
I think we have somebody joining us remotely.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
All right, wonderful. Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to present the audit. Take a few minutes tonight. As I've listened so far, I'm impressed by the challenges that you have to meet. I myself have 6 children, and these are challenging times. So we appreciate your service. And I'm going to cover the 2019-2020 financial audit for the district. The main results from that audit. I'm going to go ahead and try to share my screen, and hopefully this will work. You would think I'd be a pro at Zoom by now, but I don't know that I would say that. So here we go. Okay, do we have the slides up okay? Maybe you could give me a wave. Okay, great.
Yeah, we got them.
All right. I want to say first thanks to the district staff. Jerry and her team are wonderful to work with. We can't compliment them enough. They're available to provide us with all the information that we need, and we were able to move through the engagement despite the various COVID restrictions that are going on. I guess everybody's probably aware that accountants naturally social distance. And so we're able to move through the auditing just fine. So this will be another on-time delivery for the financial statements to the state of Nevada, Department of Education. We want to also invite Jerry, who may have some insights as I go along in my presentation. She may want to add a few things here and there. We want to welcome that. I'm going to cover the audit reports and findings, financial highlights, and then end with some graphs and trends for the district. So first of all, if you have an electronic copy of the financial statements, there are several reports in there that we issue as a firm. The independent auditor's report would be found on page 1. That is a clean opinion on the financial statements, or an unmodified opinion. So there's no issues or problems there. On page 96, we have our report on internal controls over financial reporting and on compliance. I'm happy to report that we have no findings this year, neither control findings or compliance findings that were significant to report to the board. So that's complimentary of the staff and the controls that are in place there. We do walkthroughs of all the main controls for the district, and we feel like those are operating appropriately. There's no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. So next, we have our independent auditor's report on compliance for each major federal program that was tested. That would be found on page 98. And I'm happy to report that we didn't have any federal program related internal control findings or compliance findings. And so again, compliments to Jerry and her staff for overseeing those funds. As you know, those federal funds come with strings attached, and we feel like those compliance requirements are well understood by the district staff, and they're following those requirements. And then finally, our last report is the report on compliance with statutes and administrative code and the NRS. That's on page 106. You will see that there were 2 budgetary compliance issues noted they're actually in the notes to the financial statements. So that would be on page 28, and also in the schedule of findings and question costs, that would be on page 104. And these relate to 2 funds that were over budget for the year. according to the approved budget, they went over. So I'll go to that next. So the budgetary compliance issues were the special education fund was over its budget by $4,589. And you could find the information for that on page 57. And the internal service fund or the self-insurance fund, health fund, was over by $2 million. And that's on page 84. So our recommendation in the findings were to re-examine the controls for budgetary compliance and make sure that you make adjustments to those things coming up. So I don't know if, Jerry, if you have any comments on this at this point, or do you want me to just keep going ahead?
No, the one for special ed, that one, is very minor. The health insurance fund, of course, $1 million of that, we didn't even know what it was because that's that incurred but not reported. The claims that were, for doctor visits or procedures that happened before the end of June that we don't know about until August, September or something. So it's really hard to do that. And of course, I could just budget high on the self-insurance fund, but you have to have the resources to go with it. And this year, the health insurance fund did end up with a deficit fund balance. So we need to be trying to do something to dig that out of the hole. And that's one of the reasons I believe that we did raise health insurance premiums recently. So that should help with those problems.
Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate that insight. Okay, I'm going to move on unless there's any questions. I'm not sure how I would see questions. Maybe you'd have to wave at me. But I'll move on. The fund financial highlights. I want to look at page 18 in the financial statements, if you have those in front of you. And this is basically just to take a quick look at the main changes in the funds. So you can see your general fund is down. Its fund balance or resources are down 1.5 million from the previous year. Special education is also a major fund that operates at a zero fund balance, so there's no changes there. Capital improvement fund is down 504,000 from the previous year. And then if you considered all the other major funds, the non-major funds, those are up 856,000. So the overall decrease in your fund balance is 1.1 million. You still have fund balances in reserves, so I'm not majorly concerned there, but wanted to report the high level changes there. Going into this next slide, you'll see some of the trends for the funds. And this gives you the 5-year kind of look, high level look at all of the different programs and revenue sources and expenditures. You can see in fiscal year 18 and 19 that there was a significant reduction in fund balances, and that was primarily due to the Liberty Elementary building being built. And so there were more expenditures in the facilities and improvements. You can see that trend did not continue in fiscal year 20. There were less expenditures in facility acquisition, only 17.1 million. And as I stated before, you've got an overall reduction in your fund balance of 1.1 million. Any questions there? Okay. I'm gonna just gotta move a couple things around here on my screen. So, okay. So capital asset activity. These were the major expenditures during fiscal year 20. So Liberty Peak Elementary had another about $1 million of expenses that took place. The Elko High School new science building, 5.5 million in expenditures. EHS auditorium, 3.3, and then some other items there that you can see on the screen. Major dispositions during the year. There were some computers and equipment that were disposed of. These are just obsolete and out of date items that were taken off of the books, and then some trucks and vehicles for 100,000. So that's your main capital asset activity. On the long-term liabilities activity, you have primarily just a few loans for school buses. The balance of those loans were $592,000 at year end. And you can see that on page 39. These other two liabilities that you have on your books were put there by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. I don't like to take responsibility for them because they're very large and not well understood. I'll just say that. But you have your net pension liability that actually decreased during the year for 4.1 million. And the net other post-employment benefits, or OPEB liability, increased substantially. And I believe it was just plan experience that's going on there. We tend to, there's actuaries involved in these liabilities. And so we, as auditors, basically take that information from the actuaries and make sure that that's reported in your financial statements. So digging into why those go up or down significantly would be digging into the actuarial reports. Okay, I'm now down to the trends that you've got in your funds, and this is the general fund. And I'm just presenting the fund balances here so that you can get an idea of whether resources are improving or decreasing in a fund. Let me flip to my notes here. The general fund fund balance was down just a little bit in terms of the unassigned fund balance, which is the top number. So it went from 10 million down to 8.7. There's also the 2.8 million in the middle of the screen. That is assigned to next year's budget. So that's assigned fund balance. The 1.5 million in your fund balance is restricted net proceeds that came in right at the end of the year that is carried over into the next fiscal year. So that number tends to stay pretty consistent depending on net proceeds coming in. And then the last two items are your non-spendable and committed for salary increases. So the commitment for salary increases was 250,000, as you can see there at the bottom. And then you have a little bit of non-spendable, which is primarily prepaids and inventory that have already been purchased. So those are still in your fund balance, but you haven't expended them yet. So right now you have about 1.16 months of operating expenses in your unassigned fund balance. So kind of the guideline that's out there in the industry is to try to get that at least to 2 months. So you're right there nearing 2 months. Overall, the overall fund balance is 15% of expenditures, and that is above the 4% minimum that's required by the NRS. So in pretty good shape in terms of the general fund balance. The capital improvement fund balance is pretty flat for the year, not much of a change there. You had quite a bit of expenditures that took place, the capital asset expenditures that I talked about earlier. Those were the main expenditures for the year, but they also had revenues to offset them. So that's why your fund balance is staying pretty consistent in your capital improvement fund. And then finally, cash and investment balance trend. You can see that this is the total cash in the governmental funds, and that is at 35.6 million down to 33.8 million. So cash is stable for the most part. And I think that's going to conclude my presentation unless you have any questions. I appreciate my team as well. Kelly's my right-hand gal that takes care of a lot of stuff, and so we work together on these engagements. So I appreciate her and appreciate working for the district, and happy to answer any questions at this time.
Any questions from the board?
My only question is not for the auditor, but it's for staff. Have we been looking at possibly reviewing the insurance plan again? I know we did a few years way back where we brought together all the vested entities and discussed the plan and adopted the self-insured one here locally.
We haven't pursued that at this point.
Is it something being considered or?
Actually, this is the first time it's been brought up.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board? Well, Mr. Atkinson, we thank you for your presentation and making it thorough enough. We didn't even have questions.
Oh, that's okay. I don't mind some questions. So thank you. Appreciate being here.
Thank you. All right. If there's nothing else from the board, we will move on to item 4.1, which is our consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes, oh, yes, we do. Thank you. We'll go back to that. Chair votes aye and the consent agenda is approved. We do need to move back. You were thorough enough in your report. I forgot that we do need to accept your report. So we do need a motion on item 3.1 for an acceptance of the audit as prepared by Hinton Burdick.
Move to approve.
Okay. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye, and that is approved. Thank you again. Item 5.1 is a report from our NSB director. Mr. Wines.
Well, I forwarded that email with all the awards on it. We have a meeting day after tomorrow to build a platform for NASB to put in front of the legislature. If anybody's got anything you really want to have on it, it deals with appointed boards opposing that, and mostly our stance on NASB stance on that, but I'll know more day after tomorrow night.
And do we submit those to you, or should we submit those to Deb if we have?
If you have something you want on the platform, give it to me and I'll bring it up.
All right. Any other questions or guidance for Mr. Wines? All right, we'll move on to item 5.2, items from board members. Please, and I'm going to take an opportunity to welcome our newest board member, Mr. Gerber, and give him the floor for a minute.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you all for having me here. And I'd like to, mostly questions on a couple things. Because of the public comments we did have the last several meetings. We want to go hybrid. What are we doing to actually help the teachers and the students to do it safely so that we don't have to crash and have to change our course totally? If I look at I just have the question for the construction update from your report, Dr. Robinson. The projects in development, I don't see anything here for the HVAC system, for example, in West Wendover. Is it possible, and I'm not going to put a name to this because I don't like putting words in people's mouths, but it was brought up, I believe, 2 meetings ago from one of the trustees, that we meet every 2 weeks. So if we need to speed roll it a little bit so that we can actually hit our goals of getting our kids back in school. My question is it possible to get a damage control from the schools and the administrators of what they need done to the schools right now? And then can we turn it over to the committee that approached us, who have some money, so that it could be a donation so we could actually bypass the due process of the state and school and county? Does that make sense? And could we call the community basically and say, who can go install a new HVAC system or fix it in West Wendover so that the teachers aren't scared to go into the schools and the students aren't scared to go into the classrooms?
I know we have Mr. Kelly on, and Casey, would you like to address any of those?
Yeah, as far as West Wendover, that system is functioning properly as it's designed. And to replace that, it's not as easy as something at your house. That's going to be a $6 to $8 million project, more than likely.
But so it is. So why the concern? Why the broken communication there?
I believe, Mr. Kelly, you went and looked at that,
Okay.
correct?
Going to occur the very next day.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. And we're looking at school per school. Each community can kind of go their own way, which is amazing, and I commend all of you for making that decision. Are we looking a little bit at the teachers and the students as well, in the sense that a 24-year-old teacher probably doesn't have the same concerns as a 55-year-old teacher? And I was looking, for example, in Germany, there's some teachers who actually have plexiglass around their desks. So they're more, it's all about being comfortable, and some things are easier done than others. Obviously, changing a whole HVAC system, I understand, is a little complicated, especially nowadays. Material in itself is hard to do. But having spot, like Bobby, the head nurse, was pointing out, in the nurse's office, they're going to have air purifiers. So for the higher risk teachers or students, could we have a couple of those in the schools, in the classrooms? Is that something we could look at and be donated, perhaps?
Well, we meet regularly to talk, and we just met today, to talk about those items that we're still looking, that we still need to put into place, but we have the plexiglass and invested in those, and the air purifiers where they're, where they may be requested. I mean, we can certainly broaden the work we're doing with that, but that is something that we're talking about regularly, and making sure that we have those things that we need. It's also really important to have the training with all staff, and so we're continuing to work on that too. But again, our team just met today to talk about, to list those things that we might be short on or missing, and things like air purifiers would be the perfect thing that we could give to when we're giving our request to the county and sharing in those care dollars, so we can continue to look in that way.
Because I just don't want to fall into a situation where we have more resignations, and then we can go hybrid, but we have nobody on the other end. So I just want to make sure that the communication or the teachers are actually aware of what we're trying to do in those respects. And the other thing, is it possible, and this is financial, this I don't know, is it possible to maybe have a special fund for a COVID leave for the teachers, so they don't have to use their sick days if it's just a quarantine, just to be careful? Is that something possible financially, or?
They already have access to emergency paid sick leave. It's 80 hours.
Okay.
And that happens if, obviously, it works if they're positive, but it also works if they're a close contact and they're required to be quarantined. So that they have essentially 2 full weeks of paid leave for that does not affect their existing sick leave balance.
And my last question, I guess, would it be possible, because I've heard that the rapid testing is very fallible, it's not very reliable. So why give a false sense of security? Would it be possible for the county or the commissioners or the senators to allocate some kind of lab so that we could have a test faster than 2 weeks or 10 days? Could we bring that time period down so that, for example, a mother that's worried about her child and her father and her whole family, we can bring that timeline down, shorten it down?
Well, that's one of the things that's on our list that we talked about today, as a matter of fact. There's a lot involved in it. There is the purchase of the equipment, and that's something that we'll talk to the county about when we present our list. What we were talking about with that is then there's the partnership, because we're not a lab, and the certification to get our staff certified to be able to do the lab work and then be able to read the results is extensive. So one of the things that we're talking about is a potential, and this has just been in the first stages of it, but a potential partnership somewhere in the community, and, you know, we, again, even discussing potential ideas with labs, that we could put something in place so that we could just have another opportunity for that testing that might bring the results in a little bit quicker. I mean, the 7-day delay is it becomes a problem and a challenge for us. So it's finding those, the ability to be able to partner along with the equipment so that we can get test results back in a few days.
Or following up on Luke's question, are we seeing any increase on the part of our staff going and getting tested, whether they're asymptomatic or symptomatic? Or are we just seeing individuals going in to Medalis or wherever it might be to get tested? Are we seeing an increase in our staff going in?
So I'll just say a couple of things, and I think Ms. Shanks is joining and listening. And so, Bobby, if you are there and I miss anything, please feel free to jump in. We have a program that I've made the board aware of that came out of the Teachers Health Trust out of Clark County, and working with I believe the Governor's Care money was contributing to this. It's a very new program. We're at the very beginning of it, and so there's lots to work out, a lot of bumps and things to work out with it. But it is designed so that if the district decides to participate in it, that all employees can receive free testing, and the results come in within a few days. So that's just something we started, the program just got started last week, and so we saw people express an interest, and the actual teams that did the testing actually went out to our outer communities in Jackpot and Carlin and West Wendover and so forth to provide opportunities for the testing to happen then. And so it's been relatively successful. As I said, it's a new program, and so they still have a lot of things that they're trying to work out. So I'm going to say there's an increase because this is an opportunity that we didn't have, that the district has not had been able to provide that. As far as what's happening in the community, unless it is someone who is symptomatic or close contact, or there's some reason that we say to an employee, you'll need to go get testing, we don't know necessarily if an employee decides to go get testing. So as an example, the National Guard, the County Commission, was able to partner with the National Guard, and they've been here for several Fridays over the course of the past couple of months, and I know a lot of us have taken advantage of it. I don't know what the numbers are in the community or how many of the people. That
information isn't really
right.
readily available.
Right, we wouldn't necessarily know.
And what are we communicating with the students to bring up something that was brought up last time? What if in the high school they all go in carpool, so they're social distancing, and then all of a sudden they go have lunch at Maverick? Are we trying to communicate with them that best, without scolding them, but just telling them best practice would probably be not to do that? Or
well, of course, I mean, that's been the communication that's been, just across the community.
we're putting it on the students a little more, maybe.
Right, but when students are in school, when they're back in school, I mean, that is the concern, because when we're in school, we will be social distancing, people will be wearing masks, we will be washing hands, we have plexiglass dividers and cleaning solutions, and we'll be cleaning contact areas. We have all of that set and ready to go so that we are mitigating any chance of things happening in school. So we're not concerned as much about things happening in school as much as we are what happens when children leave our schools and when adults leave the school and live their lives. And so, absolutely there'll be communication and to students at all levels about the wisdom and seeing through on those efforts that we're doing in the schools to mitigate, because that really is where we anticipate the community challenges will happen, is when they're out in the community.
And one last thing, I promise. Can we add, just for devil, just to humor me, just to make sure it happens and we talk about it, can we add an agenda item so that we evaluate for possible approval the timelines to reopen all of Elko County schools in the hybrid or full-time model? Can we do that for the next meeting? Because we will have almost half the schools reopen on the 9th, so a day prior, just to kind of get a report on that and kind of touch base to see if we're on the right track or not, which we will be on the right track.
We can absolutely talk about it. I don't see why we, wouldn't get a report
Just to make sure that
how things are going.
we're flexible, good and bad. I mean, instead of just always going backwards, it could be these dates, especially for the future schools, the ones who are opening more so in December and whatnot, just maybe they can bring it back a week or so earlier, or if they're comfortable doing so. Obviously, we're not imposing, but just giving guidance.
Yeah, I say there's no reason we shouldn't take a look at how things are going and look at, the plan they're working on. So, yeah, we can add that as an agenda item for sure. Yeah, absolutely. All right, any other items from board members?
I just kind of wanted to touch on something that Mrs. Moore brought up earlier, in that, what is an employer going to do if your kid is excluded from campus? And I just really want to encourage the community to talk to your employers, find out what that process is. It could look different depending on where you look or where you work. So if you work at the mine, it might look one way. If you work for the county, it might look another way. Some businesses are going to do teleworking options. Just definitely talk to your employer before we roll out November 9th to make sure if that contract tracer gets a hold of you, you have options and you know what your options are before you basically burn all your PTO is what's going to happen, because your kid could potentially be exposed more than once, or if you have multiple children across multiple schools, it could impact your family that way. So I'm really strongly encouraging the public to go to your employers and also to prepare for emergency child care, because you don't know if and when you're going to get the call that your child is excluded. So I just kind of wanted to touch on that a little bit. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is I got to tour the science building and the fine arts building this morning. They are incredible, and they are a huge asset to our community, and they're going to be a huge asset to our children that get to use those facilities. And I'm very excited to see what we've been able to do with very little. And I'm incredibly proud of Alan and Casey and the work that they've put into those buildings, because there are no words. They are incredible, and we are so lucky to have them.
Anything else? Oh, please, yes. Brian.
I just wanted to welcome Luke on board. I like your sentiment from the last meeting that we definitely have to move forward in a positive manner. I know we got contentious, and for my board report, it's more about apologies. And Ms. Wines, if you're there, my ire was it was misdirected. It shouldn't have been at you, especially that was a legitimate question about variances. And so I humbly and sincerely apologize that I barked at you that way. There was no excuse for that. And of course, the community put me in check on that one. And also, we're not happy with my actions towards you, so I apologize for that. And I also wanted to give condolences to one of our staff members. I lost her husband due to COVID, and so I hope your family is doing well. If you're listening tonight, and let us know if we can do anything for you.
Thank you. All right. And I just echo that, your last sentiment, and reach out with our condolences. And also, I just want to say thank you to the schools for reaching out. I know everybody's been busy reaching out to families and talking about reopening dates and plans and transportation and everything else. And I know that's a huge process and an ongoing one. And I appreciate all the effort that has been put into that, because I know that's taken a lot of your time. Is there anything else from any board members? All right.
I just wanted to say can you hear me? Thank you, Mr. Zeisler, for the apology. Apology accepted. And I hope we can just move forward for the sake of our children and the county and our staff.
Definitely.
Thank you, Candace. All right, item number 6.1 is approval of the accounts payable.
Move to approve the accounts payable.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I had a question. There was 2 payments, around the 15th of this month and the 16th of the month. It was a State of Nevada annual assessment, FY '21, and it was $39,532.10. And then there was another one the next day for $39,832.10. I'm just
Yeah.
wondering, Jerry, were those duplicates or?
Well, the first one was actually voided because it was for the wrong amount, and the report that you get with your board docs did not reflect that that was a voided payment. So the one with the $800 is the correct one, the $500 was incorrect. And that's for our workers' comp, we have to pay an annual assessment to the state.
Okay, yeah, I didn't, it looked like it was a double payment, so, okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions on accounts payable? All right, I will just be disclosing that I have a family member who has an employer listed on the accounts payable, so I will also be abstaining. All right, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor of approving the accounts payable, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? All right, and the chair is abstaining, but the accounts payable are approved. Item 7.1 is a final opportunity for public comment. Mr.
May I,
Hoffman,
even
please.
though I did not sign up?
You may. We'll give you 2 minutes. Cassie's got the timer. Welcome.
Thank you. I did not intend to address the board tonight. I was just here to listen, but thank you for your patience. First thing is, apparently, Lee Hoffman. When I was here last time, your board got to the consent agenda, and kind of by my old habit of city council, I figured that debate was over and there wasn't going to be much discussion. It was 11 o'clock at night, and I stood up and left. And it seemed like my exit was noticed. I didn't particularly think it would be. So I wish to apologize to the board if that appeared to be a rude departure. It was not meant to be. It was just 11 o'clock at night, and I figured discussion was mostly over. So I apologize to the board if that was perceived to be rude. Other than that, I appreciate hearing this tonight, and it sounds like you are indeed making progress. I'm just going to say that for the committee I represented that evening, we still stand ready to assist if we can. If you're looking for resources, and we don't have unlimited resources, I don't mean to imply that, but we do have resources, and if there is a way to help, we remain at your disposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Is there anyone else who wishes to make a comment? All right. We'll move on to item 8.1, adjournment of the meeting.
Move to adjourn.
All right, thank you. We have many people moving. Any discussion? All in favor? No more 4 hours. All in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thank you, Candace. Chair votes aye, and we are adjourned. Thank you.